Have you ever wondered what would happen if the US couldn't pay its bills? Picture this. There's a family down the street who loves to live big. They have a huge house with a pool, shiny new cars in the driveway, and they're always jetting off on fancy vacations. Everyone envies their life. But here's the darker truth. They're paying for it all with credit cards and loans. For a while, it works. They swipe their cards, make the minimum payments, and keep borrowing more. Life feels easy. But then, something shifts. The bank raises the interest rates on their loans. Suddenly, those minimum payments double, and no one will lend them more money. They miss a payment, then another. Debt collectors start calling non-stop, threatening legal action. Before long, the family loses their house, the cars get repossessed, and they're left with nothing but a pile of bills they can't pay. It's a total collapse. All because their debt spiraled out of control. That story might sound dramatic, but it's a simple way to think about what could happen if the US national debt bursts. The US government has been borrowing money for years, just like that family. Right now, the debt is over $30 trillion. That's a 30 with 12 zeros. But what if it gets too big to handle? In this video, we're going to break it down. What this debt is, why it hasn't crashed yet, and what could happen to you and me if it all falls apart. Let's dive in. First things first, what even is the national debt? It's the total amount of money the US government owes. Think of it like this. You've got a piggy bank. If you spend more money than you put in, you've got to borrow from someone else, like your parents or a friend, to cover the difference. The US does the same thing. When it spends more than it collects from taxes, it borrows money by selling treasury bonds. People, banks, and even other countries buy these bonds, and the government promises to pay them back later with interest. The government uses this borrowed money to fund important things like building roads, schools, and hospitals, or to help people during tough times, like after a natural disaster or an economic downturn. Over the years, this borrowing has piled up. Big events like wars, the 2008 financial crash, and tax cuts have made the debt grow faster. For example, during the pandemic, the government spent trillions to send relief checks and support businesses, adding even more to the tab. It's like if you kept borrowing from your friend to buy video games, snacks, and new clothes, eventually that debt gets massive. For the US, it's now over $30 trillion, and it keeps climbing. So with all that borrowing, why hasn't this huge debt caused trouble yet? Here's the surprising part. Even with all this debt, things seem fine, for now. The US has a couple of superpowers that keep it afloat. First, it borrows money in dollars, and the dollar is like the king of money worldwide. Everyone, other countries, banks, you name it, wants dollars and US Treasury bonds because they trust them. It's like if you borrow from your friend, but they're happy to keep lending because they know you're reliable. Second, interest rates have been super low for years. Imagine borrowing $100 from your friend, but you only have to pay them back $1 extra each year. That's easy to manage. The US has handled its debt because borrowing has been cheap. Plus, there's this group called the Federal Reserve. Think of them as money wizards. They can tweak things to keep interest rates low, making it easier for the government to pay its bills. For instance, the Fed can buy treasury bonds, which increases demand and keeps borrowing costs down, like getting a low-interest loan from a buddy. But this situation can't last forever. If the debt grows too fast, trouble could brew. One big risk is if people stop trusting the US to pay back its loans. If banks or other countries think, hey, this debt is too big, they might not pay us, they'll stop lending or demand way higher interest. Another issue could arise if interest rates spike. Maybe the economy overheats, prices for stuff like gas and food soar, and the Federal Reserve has to raise rates to slow things down. Higher rates mean the government pays more to borrow, which could strain its budget. There's also something called the debt ceiling, a limit set by Congress on how much the government can borrow. If lawmakers hit that limit and bicker instead of raising it, the US could miss a payment. This almost happened in 2011, spooking markets and showing how the debt ceiling could trigger a crisis. If the US defaults, meaning it can't pay its loans, things get wild. Treasury bonds are like the gold standard of safe investments. banks, retirement funds, and countries all own them. If the US says, "Sorry, we can't pay," it's like the bank telling you your savings are gone. Panic would spread fast. The stock market could crash, wiping out people's retirement savings overnight. And since many countries and institutions globally hold US Treasury bonds, a default could spark financial chaos worldwide, shaking economies far beyond America's borders. The fallout keeps rolling from there. The dollar might lose its status as the world's top currency. If that happens, borrowing gets pricier and the dollar's value could drop. That means imported goods like clothes, electronics, or coffee cost more. The US economy could slide into a recession or worse. The government might cut spending drastically, slashing jobs and services like schools, bridges, or disaster relief. This hits us right at home. Taxes might rise as the government scrambles for cash, taking more from your paycheck. Programs like Social Security or Medicare could shrink. Bad news if you rely on them. Then there's inflation. If the government prints money to pay its bills, a $5 burger could jump to $7. Groceries, gas, and rent would all get pricier, squeezing family budgets. Jobs could disappear too. Businesses might shut down or lay off workers in a recession. And loans for cars or houses? Banks might tighten up or charge sky-high rates. But there's hope. The government could avoid a crisis by spending less, like trimming unnecessary projects. The catch? Everyone disagrees on what's unnecessary. Raising taxes, maybe on the wealthy or big corporations, is another option, though it's a political battle. Growing the economy through better infrastructure, education, or technology could bring in more tax revenue without hiking rates. Some suggest tweaking Social Security, like raising the retirement age slightly, to ease the burden. It all requires bipartisan teamwork, though, and that's tough when politicians clash over every detail. But what about you? How can you protect your wealth if this debt mess blows up? Start by saving more now. Think of it like stashing extra snacks for a rainy day. Put money in a high-yield savings account or safe investments like gold, which holds value when the dollar weakens. Diversify your investments. Don't put all your eggs in one basket, like stocks or bonds tied to the US economy. Consider learning about cryptocurrencies. Some, like Bitcoin, can act as a hedge against inflation, though they're risky, so research first. Pay off high-interest debts like credit cards to avoid getting crushed if rates spike. And keep an eye on the news. Stay informed about the economy so you can adjust your plans. These steps won't make you bulletproof, but they're like building a financial lifeboat to weather the storm. This debt is growing every day, and it's something we all need to keep an eye on. Imagine your own piggy bank. How would you prepare if prices shot up or jobs got shaky? It's worth thinking about now before any storm hits. The choices we make, from saving a bit extra to pushing for smarter policies, could shape how this story plays out. So let's stay curious and keep asking questions about what's next for our economy.